Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 76 of the White Knuckle podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for tuning back into episode number 76 of the White Knuckle podcast. Today, you're going to hear Todd's seminar that he put on at West Bend, Wisconsin at Deer Fest. The seminar was titled Killing Ghost Bucks, and Todd goes through great lengths to explain to everyone the things that he does to track down some of these bucks that seemingly disappear, and the tactics that he uses basically to coax them back onto his property. You're not going to be able to see the pictures that Todd used, but you've all seen the pictures before of the deer that he shot and things of that nature. So I hope you enjoy the seminar as much as we did putting it on. We had a great turnout for both of the seminars that we did, and we want to thank anyone who came out to support us there. We had lots of great feedback while we were at West Bend, and we certainly appreciate that. We certainly appreciate Ozonics' help while we were at West Bend as well. We appreciate Ozonics' help throughout the last couple of years in this podcast project. Without them, we couldn't do it. Without you guys, we couldn't do it. I just want to remind you, I normally do it at the end of the show. Today, I'll do it at the beginning of the show. Ozonics is now factory ship direct. If you haven't heard me say that before, I'll say it again. Ozonics is factory ship direct. What does that mean to you? It means you can get better deals or great deals that you didn't maybe necessarily get in the past. They're able to do things like throw dry wash bags in, or kinetic packs, or a neoprene cover, or whatever the case may be. They're able to do special things for us that they weren't able to do in the past. So if you want to look at what the White Knuckle deal is coming up here, just go to www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP, and you'll be able to see the bundle deal that White Knuckle has coming. That's going to change here very shortly to the run and gun bundle we've got with Ozonics, and designed a bundle of products that we felt would suit the kind of hunters that are listening to this podcast. And by and large, we feel like we accomplished that. It's going to be a little bit before that's on the page, but likely the next time you log in and look at www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP, you'll see the brand new run and gun bundle. With that, here is Todd at West Bend.
Well, thank you very much for coming to our Killing Ghost Buck seminar. My name's Todd Prignitz, and I started White Knuckle Productions, about 12 years ago now. Basically, I was a whitetail fanatic and wanted to figure out a way to share my stories. But along the way, Jason Syons is my partner in crime with White Knuckle. He helps do the podcast with us. He's also been hunting with me many years, and we basically are a great team. He helps me get all the technical stuff figured out, and I'm kind of the deer guy, I guess you could say. But basically, my background is in kind of twofold. I'm an engineer by trade, so I design and develop a lot of hunting products over the years. And I think my engineering mindset and just like kind of processes and doing things efficiently, I kind of have just a different way of looking at things. And it's really ended up helping me in my whitetail hunting over the years an incredible amount. So what we're going to try to do is teach you some ideas, hopefully things that you might be able to take bits and pieces of what we do and make it a part of yours. We're not up here to say, hey, we're the experts, this is the only way of doing it. There's a lot of different ways to attack an animal. We're just going to share the way that we do it and what I found that works for me over the years.
I'm Jason. I basically do what Todd said, help Todd with the business part of the business. I hunt with him, or have hunted with him. I drew an Iowa tag this year, so I'm going to get to hunt with him again. As he said, I think that he's an engineer by trade, and that makes him overly analytical. So I think you'll all enjoy how he just tries to put the pieces together and make sense out of everything that these deer do. Even though he's calling them ghost bucks, he's through a process of elimination, or his process of elimination, he's able to sort of figure out their habits. I conversely don't hunt that way, and haven't. I hunt in Wisconsin, like probably a lot of you do. I I guess I hunt on a small piece of property, or had hunted on a small piece of property up until this last year. I decided to hunt on public. So I did, and had a little bit of luck. I ended up taking that deer for my first public deer ever. It was a good accomplishment. I had a lot of fun doing it. A few of the other bucks that I've been able to take off of my property that I have in Columbia County, that was a deer we called Elvis, and then this other one here is another one we called Splitter. So we have two very different styles, and I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that I have to manage my expectations based off of my situation. And I think if there's anything that you can take away from this seminar or any of the ones that you go to this weekend, is that your expectations or your goals don't necessarily need to be what Todd's are or anybody else's are. I think it's all got to be based on what deer are in your area, because you can't kill one that's not there, and exactly what you're dealing with. And Todd deals with pressure next door just like we all do, and you'll hear about that in just a second. You're going to think he's crazy, but it works.
The way I do everything, whether it's new business, because I'm an entrepreneur, or whether it's deer hunting, I'm all about goals. You have to really be honest with yourself and determine what your goal is. If your goal is to kill a ghost buck, then you have to dedicate your season and your planning and preparation for that. So if I'm trying to kill 6-7-year-old animals, you obviously can't shoot the 3 and 4-year-olds to get to that point. And I'm not saying that anybody should pass anything that you don't feel comfortable passing. That's just for my personal goal. I want to kill these big old deer that nobody else can kill in my neighborhood. And I've got about 20 bow hunters within 1 mile of my property. So I deal with pressure like you, but I've learned to use that pressure to my benefit. And part of the way I do that is the way I have my property set up and what I've learned over the years.
I think one of the things that I just want to point out, that Lee Lukoski said it best on one of our podcasts that we recorded with him, and that was, a 5, 6, 7-year-old on his property might be a 3 or 4-year-old on a different property. So just, as we go through this, keep in mind that a lot of the deer that you're hunting could be as educated as the deer that Todd's hunting. They just had longer to develop.
Sure.
And if you learn to apply those tactics to it, you'll find more success.
In my background, I grew up in Michigan, so I hunted 16 years in Michigan public land before I moved to Iowa about 13 years ago. So I get it. I've been on the worst side of the stick where there wasn't a 1-year-old to kill, let alone anything with a rack on it. So I've been there. I understand it, but it made me the hunter that I am. And that's what my goal was, is Walter Payton and I ended up getting him this year. So it's just a dream come true, and I still can't believe I got him, to be honest with you. So my property that I own in Iowa is 63 acres. This is basically a good overview of it. And essentially, my property lines pretty much run like so, and there's a big creek that runs along the back. And I also have a 20-acre piece here that I call the sanctuary. My house is right here, so I'm able to actually view a lot of my farm, and including a lot of the food plots that I have. So that is 10 years worth of work, basically, and how I've set my property up to be able to access my primary areas. You see the little black dots. These are some of my main stands here. And what I found over the years is that throughout the hunting season, the way that bucks keep you guessing, you have to keep them guessing as well. So if I take the same trail back and forth every single time I hunt these properties, it doesn't take long for the deer to start to realize, okay, I know where I'm going to avoid, or I know where I'm going to need to set up shop. And that Katie's buck, he used to bed right in here, right? This is my house, my neighbor's house, right in this backyard area, because he could keep tabs on us, because we used to come right across this area all the time. So over the years, these deer have patterned us and figure things away. So what I like to do, I have mowed trails around my main areas, and then through the center I've got some different food plots and whatnot. But these are trails I've cleared over the years, and some of them are now brushed up and everything else. But I like having options. So during the season, as my season's progressing, based on what I'm seeing visually out hunting, based on what my trail cameras are telling me, I've got options to access these stands that the deer would never imagine. So when I take different trails in, I'll take different trails every single time I access one of my key spots. I don't overhunt things, but there are times where I hunt multiple stands multiple times a year. When I do that, I like to change it up each time, access in weird ways where they just wouldn't be able to anticipate or be able to basically predict my movements.
One thing real quick I wanted to mention is that if anyone has a question, this is real informal.
Yes,
just
absolutely.
put your hand up and
Sure.
ask
Part
away.
of the reason you're doing the trails you just talked about, that if you bump something on your property, you're not always bumping it out of the same nest, so to speak.
My farm is actually not very well suited for bedding. Most of my bedding is up in here, out in this section over here, up in this area, and then over here. And I just avoid those areas. Most of these trails are actually for the deer. I want to give them options in areas where they can travel, and then it creates perfect little spots like right there or back here where I can put a trail camera and I can get pictures of every single deer on my farm in one camera, basically. So again, I'm trying to be efficient. I don't want to have 20 cameras out there. I don't have to have 20 stands. I want 3. And I want to be able to monitor everything on my property with basically 3 tree stands, 3 blinds, 3 food plots, and I'll get into that next. The way I rationalize things is that my brain just breaks. I like to break things into sections. If you look at one big map, sometimes it becomes overwhelming. So I like to break mine into sections. These are approximately 20-acre sections, and it basically shows how I've set my farm up so that with one kick butt plot, one green plot in the right location, and I have a ground blind over that one, and that one, I can essentially cover my whole property with those 3 spots. Now the challenge with that is, if I go in there and hunt those spots over and over and over again throughout the season, there's no way I'm going to be able to accomplish my goal of killing these ghost bucks, because they're going to know there's going to be pressure in that area. They just will avoid them. So that's where the discipline comes in and not overhunting your properties. But I will literally let this go. I've got, real quickly, corn and beans up in this area, corn and beans down here, beans, corn. I like to have grains, but I want to concentrate everything on one small plot in one area. If you've got 3 plots, I went nuts the first year. I got equipment to put in food plots, which I do everything with an ATV. So I'm pretty I'm pretty old school. I don't have the big farm equipment. But I used to have these green plots all over my farm because I just thought more is better, more is better, more is better. What ends up being, it gives the deer too many options. I want to concentrate every freaking deer in this whole area on that plot daily. What that does, by locating all those does in one specific spot, take a wild guess where that buck is going to want to set up shop. The dominant bucks want to be around the most does they can without having to go anywhere. So they can just hang out in this bedding area, wait till dark, come out and breed. On the right time, the right day, move in on this ground blind and you can get a crack at them on those plots, but you just can't hunt them until it's time. Go ahead.
Do you ever have problems with like eating off the plot?
Mowing it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have, my area actually has a pretty healthy deer herd where I don't have a ton of pressure. Generally, most of the deer are feeding in big agriculture around my farm, so these green plots I put in this time of year, and depending on how much pressure you have, you kind of have to up the number of plots. So like, let's say all of a sudden the population of my farm went through the roof, then I would probably have to either increase the size of my plots or just add another one someplace, just so that it eases on the browsing pressure. But I've got lots of natural greens, like some beautiful clover patches that come through here, and just huge sections of CRP where I've let the food plots kind of go and just come back as natural brush. And they seem to really like to browse through that CRP and eat all those variety of plants. So sometimes the best food plot is just natural, and other times you just want to get that one killer plot here, here, and here that every single buck will be checking during the rut, because that's where the party's at, basically. Sanctuaries are such an important factor in my property setup and how I hunt it. I cannot tell you. The red areas here are basically areas I do not go into come hunting season. Now during shed season, doing food plots, I don't worry about that. I'm not worried about being in this area and putting in this food plot in the next couple weeks, because most of my bucks aren't even in this area until the rut anyway. These red areas are areas I literally leave to the deer. Now through the season, as in the beginning, you have all your food plots, your tree stands set up, your monitored show cameras. You've got kind of a plan A, plan B, and a plan C. Things don't always go as planned. So I start my season off with my game plan, and then as the season progresses, as it gets into early November, and then towards the mid-November, if things aren't working out, then I will start diving into some of these bedding areas and start hunting them. But I certainly want to give the food plots in the open areas and the more easy to access areas a chance first, and move in slowly basically after that.
One thing that I wanted to point out with respect to, sanctuaries is a lot of us don't have the luxury to have a sanctuary because we're hunting on 80 acres or something like that. And having gone through the process of public hunting last year in Wisconsin, there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity. So you can make a sanctuary on your 80-acre property or 40-acre property and just not hunt it as much as you normally would and learn some different areas. There's just, again, a ton of opportunity. We use Ozonics maps. The guys from the hunting public would tell you to do the same thing, get their subscription, and you'll learn that there's more public land that maybe isn't advertised to the general public like you think it would be available for you to hunt. And that'll allow you to do things like have a sanctuary on your property that'll keep a bigger deer there longer versus you going in there and hunting. Because when it comes time to hunt, we want to hunt. And that becomes tough when you're relegated to 80 acres.
Sure.
So when it comes to sanctuaries, we've got 80 acres in one of our leases, and probably about 20 of it we leave sanctuary, but we leave sanctuary year round. Do you think we're hurting ourselves there by not going in and taking a look to see what's going on?
Well, if your goal is to kill those ghost bucks, sometimes you got no choice. You certainly don't want to go barging in there on October 1st or September 18th or whenever you guys' season opens. You want to, hunt it straight, hunt it to the best of your ability. But there comes a certain point where I'm very impatient, and I would rather take the chance of blowing one of these big deer out and killing them than sit back and not kill them. Because you have to realize if that ghost buck you're hunting has made it to 5 or 6 or 7 years old, and you've been doing the same thing for those years, it's not working. It's not going to all of a sudden amazingly work when they're 7 years old. So you have to change your approach in order to get a different result. And we're going to get into more of that in detail later. The one thing I want to tell you about these sanctuaries, if I had no hunting pressure around my farm, it wouldn't work. I actually rely on my neighbors to hunt improperly, to overhunt their pieces, and I'm telling you, some of the most beautiful habitat up here, but they don't have access like I do. They put pressure on from all directions. I mean, I'm talking, I have hunters all around me. They all know I'm a good hunter and kill big bucks, and so that pushes them into the field to get into the good areas earlier than normal, earlier than they should. They go in, they start doing their calling, they're rattling, and they're grunting, and accessing improperly. They put the pressure on all around my farm, and I let them. And while they're out there hunting all through October, getting into late October, I'm sitting back and letting them do all the work for me. They're filling my sanctuaries with deer, and my plots are doing the rest. It gives them every reason, plus human pressure from the outside, pushing everything into one area. And then if you can wait strategically until the right time, which is usually around Halloween, the 31st of October is one of my favorite times, that's when you go into one of those spots and you can kill them the first time in. But I live right there, so I have to literally watch this property and just have the patience and just, what is my goal? What is my goal? What is my goal? Is my goal to go out and hunt 50 days a year, or do I want to kill those 7-year-old bucks? They're not the same. So my goal is I want to go in first time in that right spot where I know he's at and kill him. Sure.
If your neighbor shoots a buck and they run into your sanctuary, do you let them go into the sanctuary?
Usually they don't ask, I'll be honest with you. But if you blow a deer out by something like that, a neighbor coming in, they're going to be right back in that same area the next day because they're there for a reason. And the way a whitetail works, if you blow a deer out of his bed and he escapes, his plan worked. He saw you coming and he survived. And it gives him actual confidence in that bedding area. You don't want to do it 3-4 days in a row. But I have killed some of the biggest bucks of my life by blowing them out of an area and then coming back from a different direction, setting up on right in a bedding area, but coming in the back door, so to speak, and killing them right in the same spot I blew them out of, in some cases only 3 or 4 days earlier. You certainly don't want to intentionally do it, but there's guys who do bump and dump where they literally go through the timber, bump big bucks, set up on them, and catch them coming back into that same bed the next morning. And I've had that work as well, amazingly. But these bucks are in those areas for a reason. You're not going to blow them out one time, but again, you don't want to make it a habit of going in, especially going in and out of your stands. You do not want to be blowing those deer out, accessing your stand. So access is a huge, huge, huge factor. So setting up my kill plots, using my neighbors, having discipline to wait, which most people don't. But again, if your end goal, if you want to kill ghost bucks, you're generally not going to do it in mid-October. It can be done. You can do it in early October over food plots. You guys have the first crack. with that September early season if you have a really good green plot. But in most cases, for those bucks to get to 6, 7 years old, they would have been killed as youngsters if they were out in the open often. So you just got to realize, in order for them to get to that point of age, that maturity, they're already that real oddball deer, because all the other guys got shot right when they were 3 or 4 years old. So they're a different animal already, not to mention they've learned all those years about your hunting practices, your neighbor's hunting practices, and what to avoid and how to survive. So they're a tough animal, but you can use it against them as well. Again, adaptation is the biggest factor in being able to continually kill big bucks year after year after year. You have all these plans and all these rules, and then the season hits and everything goes out the window, it seems like. You have to be able to adapt through the season and try crazy things sometimes in order to kill these deer, do things that no other human being has ever thought to do. And that's my secret to success, is finding a creative way to use everything, whether it's good or bad, to my benefit, or trying to find a way to leverage it to my benefit. Courage. I know we've all done the whole deal where you got a picture of your ghost buck. He's probably visiting your trail cameras at night, maybe once a week. Those are generally bucks that are coming off from their primary core areas, and they're basically doing their routines before the rut, trying to figure out where they want to hang out come breeding season. Those are the toughest bucks to kill, but with your neighbors putting all that pressure on, driving them into your area, using all these different tools and stuff, they are predictable, and you will get cracks at them, but you have to sometimes take chances and hunt areas that most guys wouldn't. Standing on the outside looking in, sitting on those fence line stands where you can see the whole fields, it's great. You might be able to see a lot of deer, but you've got to stop hunting like you have in the past. If you've not been able to be successful on those bucks on your property, hunting the way you've been hunting, you have to change your approach. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to kill these deer.
You know, Todd talked about using his neighbors, and I just have to share this quick story. He called me the day that he killed
Walter Payton.
his deer this year, Walter Payton. And he called me while I was in my office, and he told me his plan a couple of days earlier. And his plan was to go talk to the neighbor. And he told me, I'm going to go talk to the neighbor and ask him if I can hunt. And I said, why? And he said, because it's my chance to get in there and kill that deer. If he says yes, I'm going to kill him. If he says no, I'm going to kill him. And I said, I don't get it. And he said, if I'm going to go there and I'm going to tell him everything I know about this deer. I'm going to tell him where he beds, and I'm going to go after him if he lets me go in there. If he doesn't let me go in there, he's going to tell all the guys that are hunting there, and they're going to go after him. They're going to push him onto my property. And I said, you're crazy. 2 days later, he emailed me a trail camera picture of Walter Payton on his property.
They pushed him right out.
And he said, I'm going to go in there and kill him tomorrow. And I said, you're crazy. And then he called me at noon and told me where he was going to sit. And I told him, you're crazy. And then he killed him. And you'll see why I said he was crazy in just a minute, but I just had to share that.
Sometimes you've got to take what you're given and use it to the benefit. I knew in this particular case exactly where that buck was living along this creek area. And I knew my neighbors, how they hunted it. It was a farmhand and an older gentleman. And I knew where their stands were. They've hunted the same stands every year. I knew in order for them to get into those stands, they're going to have to blow a lot of deer through some pretty killer spots off in order to get back in there, because I told the farmer exactly where this buck was. And sure enough, 3 days later, he showed up out of his home range, and I'm pretty certain those guys went probably in there that next day, and they were in there, I'm sure, rattling and grunting and calling. I've stopped worrying about my neighbors killing these bucks because they haven't to this point. Unless they really change their game plan, they're still going to be safe. So sometimes you got to use your neighbors against themselves, and they don't even realize you're doing it. But sure enough, it ended up working in this case, and I got a crack at them. This is a very typical scenario on my property. I've got these cedars are all in my bottom. And so, again, taking something that is not good and changing it and making it work for you, cedars in this particular area are just not that... they're just not that good for whitetails. There's not much. They don't like to bed in them because they can't see anything. There's nothing for food as far as food goes. And cover-wise, they're too thick. It's like a solid wall of cedars. So what I started doing was chainsawing them individually, myself pulling them out my four-wheeler and creating basically these feeding areas. And then slowly but surely over the years, I've created different travel corridors back and forth, creating these central hubs where every single animal wants to go through there to check for does. And then I can run my trail cameras over that and know every animal that's been through there. And the pines have also been good for me because I can literally cut trails right to the back of my blinds through the middle of those pines like tunnels. So I can get in and out of my blinds without blowing any of the fields out. And the deer don't use those trails because I've got them really secretively hidden. So I've found unique ways of taking something that I wish I didn't have, which are all these stupid cedars, and then using it to my benefit. And every year I've been working at it and learning. But that's my fancy farm equipment right there. And I put probably 10 acres of food in every year using that. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I have access to. I don't have a payment on it. And it's very, very quick to get into those really tough spots to get into. You can't get tractors. Any questions? Okay. That's the view from out of the blind. This is very typical of a fall plot that I plant. I use Real World Deadly Dozen. If you don't, it's the best green plot you can put in the ground. It's been my secret sauce in this whole area because I don't have a lot of hardcore hunters as neighbors, thankfully. So they don't do too much in food plots. So I'm able to really pull the deer in with these green plots in areas that, you know, this time of year everything's dying and you get this green, luscious, lettuce-like material, and they simply can't resist it. And the bucks, especially late rut, they're starving. They've been chasing like crazy, and this becomes such a huge asset. Food really can make your job a lot easier if you can get it planted. Go ahead.
You plant that right about now?
Yes, anywhere, and right now it's so dry in Iowa, I don't know when I'm going to get mine in the ground, but anywhere before September 1st. But that's my favorite, and I fertilize the poop out of it, and that seems to be another big secret is you can have 15 acres of this stuff, but I'm trying to kill them with a bow and self-filming. So my plots have been getting smaller and smaller, but again, somebody mentioned about pressure. You've got to, year by year, my plans change, and usually I fail on some of my plots, and so then the next year, you know, I use that information and try to make them better. But dude, you're waiting on weather too. So rain is everything with food plots, but I'll tell you, but one thing that's a real game changer, just one kill plot, oh my gosh, what it can do to narrow down your options and the deer options to just put everything right in your lap. And with a bow, that's how you want it.
What species do you have in the mix?
It's got 12 different varieties of different grains, wheat, there's clovers.
There's a gentleman here that's selling it extreme custom food plots. He'd be in the next building.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh.
That's the guy you need to talk to about food plots. We could talk about food plots all day long. I'm an engineer, not a farmer. So like these are the guys, but like from a blue collar standpoint, that is the best seed I've used. I've used it for 5 or 6 years. And I have killed some monster whitetails on those right in front of my ground blinds because they can't resist it. They just have to eat it.
Is that what you can do year after year?
Yeah.
Is there a brassica blend in that?
Yes, there is brassicas mixed in as well. That's part of the 12 seeds. And I would highly encourage you to talk with this gentleman after about the food plot specific stuff. But yeah, it's got a mixture of everything. So from basically September 1st all the way through January, there's something in that mix they want to eat. And as the weather changes, certain types like the turnips and the radishes and things that are in that, then that becomes the preferred food source. I don't want to beat it to death because there's so much stuff about food plots. And I'm not an expert, I'm still learning, but that seems to be a really resilient plot. You put it in the ground, as long as you get rain, it grows really well in a variety of different soil situations as well. So trail cameras are something, again, everybody runs them now. Everybody's got their opinions on brands, everybody's got their styles and ways of doing things. I look at it a little bit differently than most. My goal is, again, to kill these mature bucks. My goal is not to get pretty pictures and print them off and put them on my wall. If that is, then run a bunch of trail cameras and go check them every 5 minutes. When I'm hunting a particular animal, usually by the time it makes 5, 6, 7 years old, they're taking up the same habits that the big bucks I killed in those same areas did the years before, for the same reasons. They're in the same spots for the same reasons, primarily because I'm locating the does in those areas. But there's also cover situations, bedding areas, specific bedding areas, things like that. I run cameras on most of my plots for several reasons. One, to take inventory, one, to know where the deer are at a particular time of year, but I also use trail cameras to deter deer. We've all had pictures of different bucks that come up, look at your trail camera on a tree, kind of preferably freak out, and then you don't get pictures of them anymore. I can't be everywhere on my farm hunting simultaneously, so I put trail cameras on trails, on crossings, on food plot edges, blatantly out in the open to literally deter deer from wanting to go past that area. I want to corner them, push them through an area I want them in. And if it's an area that I have a trail camera where I expect to hunt anywhere, I get it way up in the tree. I usually bring a lone wolf stick, climb up one stick into a tree, get my camera up 10 feet off the ground. We use stick and pick little trail camera mounts that you screw in the side of the tree. They work excellent, but just seems like if you get that camera above the peripheral vision of a whitetail, it's not threatening to them. But if it's blatant right here, they just want to avoid it. They just don't feel real comfortable in front of it unless you've got a food source there, which is corn, or if you're putting corn in front of them, or a mineral or something. But in general, I like to use my cameras in more ways than one, and oftentimes it's to literally deter deer movement.
Was it Tom Petty that you shot crossing in front of him?
Yep.
So one of our videos online, Todd, I don't remember exactly what it is. If you look at our YouTube channel, you'll be able to chase it down.
3 or 4 years ago.
You can see that he has a trail camera placed in front of the blind, and this deer clearly is coming away from.
And that's the next.
Is it?
Yep. So hunting over these kill plots, like the smaller the plot, about the size of this room is about my preferred kill plot. I don't want to give the deer many options other than within 50 yards of that blind, so to speak. So I have a blind brushed in the edge. Some I don't even brush in. I just leave them there year round. They get used to them. They don't care. I like to, if I got my blind set up right here and the edge of the plot's on that side, right about where our camera's set up right there, I'll put a stick and pick in the ground with my camera right on it, right on the field edge where it's as obvious as you can get. And in some cases, I don't even have batteries in them or cards. Most of the time, no, I'm running them. But what I use those for is the deer they want a safety buffer around those blinds by at least 40, 50, 60 yards. They're not going to feed 10 feet in front of it if they don't have to. They're always a little bit wary. I like to have a camera directly across the plot, so when they're coming through, they feel a little wary of the camera, and it just pushes them 10 yards closer to the blind, and it works. They just don't feel close. They don't feel comfortable being from here to the front row, and it just gives you that little bit closer, because I don't want to shoot over 30 yards if I can help it. But if you got about a 50-yard wide plot, put your camera right in front of your blind. When they come through, they're going to move around that camera toward the blind slightly. And it might give you an extra 5 or 10 yards, and sometimes with a bow, that's all you need. Soaker cameras are something I started doing years ago, where I started out after I would kill my buck that I was after that year. I'd be like, who cares? Now I'm going to go into the property and try to figure some stuff out for next year. So I'll go into these sanctuary areas, specifically big crossing areas where in the bottom of these ravines where the winds are terrible and you've maybe tried hunting them over the years, where all the buck sign is, where those nasty areas are where you've always wondered, I wonder what's coming through here, at night or during the rut when I'm not here. I put cameras up in the trees, 10, 12 feet, and I'll leave them there for the whole season. I won't check them once. Because they're up high enough, they don't scent them, they don't see them. And then at the end of the season, when I pull those cameras, the information that those things tell me is absolutely critical going into the following year. So I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always planning for the next season, the season after that. So I like to have 2 or 3 soaker cameras in sensitive areas that I'll put out in October sometime, and I'll literally leave them for the whole season. And out of those cameras, you'll pull some information that you never would imagine. In a lot of cases, those bucks are in your areas, but they're in there when you're not there because they know when you're there. And that's sometimes the hardest aspect of killing these ghost bucks are they've got your number and you just don't know it. The number one thing with hunting a particular animal, and I've seen it and I've done it myself, is you start getting the trail camera pictures, it's hunting season, it starts getting cold, and you're just dying to go in there. And this year I actually did it with Walter Payton, that big one I went in too early, just because it was beautiful weather, really, really cold. Cold front came in like the 26th or something. Halloween is about the magic number. Like for me now in Iowa, I don't hunt any of my good stuff until right around Halloween. If you can wait until that time to move into your best areas, all the nabs have been pushing in deer from all directions. The deer have felt comfortable there. The does have felt comfortable there. That first time in, go to your best spot, October 31st, around that date. And generally you'll get a crack at one of these big bucks. Because they're going to be up and moving, going from social area to social area, looking for the first doe that's going to come into heat. And they will be moving to do that, sometimes at night, but during the day, midday, October 31st, it can be absolutely phenomenal because that's the magic number, the magic date when the does just are about to come into heat. I run and gun quite a bit on my farms. Even on properties, I'll have 30 tree stands set up in advance before the season. And sure enough, a week into hard hunting, I get the intel that I'm looking for on a buck that I'm after, and I'm out hanging new stands every single day trying to move in and kill that deer. portability is such a big deal in my hunting style that I can't tell you how important it is to get that first time in experience, the first time you hunt a stand, how to try to duplicate that every single hunt throughout the entire year. I just came to the conclusion many years ago, I'd rather put the time in and work hard and do things nobody else would to see animals, to see those deer. It makes it all worthwhile when after you put all the hard work in, you actually get to locate and see those animals. Other than just hunting the same stands over and over and just saying, why am I not seeing anything? Why am I not seeing anything? Well, it's because they know you're there and they are not going to come near those areas because they patterned you over the years.
Just the type of stand blinds that you use on your property then?
What's that?
What type of stand?
Lone wolf are the best stands I've found for doing run and gun hunting and for tree stands. They're made in the USA, best quality, and they last literally forever. I still have the first one I bought 20 years ago and it's still dead quiet, but they're super quiet so you can set them up very, very easily. And I like to sneak right into their bedrooms and literally set up 40, 50, 60 yards in some cases, and I've killed bucks 10 minutes after I was set up because I was in the right spot. So Lone Wolf is what we use. They're a phenomenal product, and they're expensive, but they last forever. So you can't put a price on safety, in my opinion. So Lone Wolf is what we use. So carpet bomb hunting is a phrase that I use for my approach at going after these deer. A lot of guys feel uncomfortable about, if they know where a deer is roughly located, they got intel, whether it's on a camera or they saw the buck in a recent hunt. They want to hunt once and then get out because they're afraid of moving him. Well, he's there. Half the battle is finding out where these deer are. Once you do, I will strategically go in and pound the crap out of one small area from all directions. Let's just say, if this is the spot where he's bedded, I'll start by coming in and going here. Come out. Next day, I'll come in from this direction and go to there, depending on winds, of course. The next time, I'll come in, but I'll do it hunt after hunt after hunt for 2 or 3 straight days. And it's for more than one reason. One is, if they're there, I want to kill them or I'm going to blow them out. If I do blow them out, I know where they're not going to be tomorrow. And so I'll use, if I'm going in and hunting this spot, and I've hunted it several times and I haven't seen him, I can pretty much guess that he probably caught my track or caught movement or knew something wasn't right. So then I can say, well, what's the wind blowing? If the wind's blowing, let's just say from the top down, that buck's going to want to get on the downwind side of where all that activity has been recently. He's not going to move out of the territory. He's there to breed. That's the only time of year they can do it. He's not going to move completely out of the area. But I will literally carpet bomb that area so that I know he is not going to want to be in that small area, and I'll hunt downwind of that the next time, trying to anticipate what his move is going to be. If he crosses my scent several times within a 24-hour period, 36-hour period, he's going to avoid that area, but he's still going to be very close, within a couple hundred yards most likely. Because he's not going to move out of that area where he's put time, he's invested time in that to set it up and breed those does. That's what these dominant bucks do. So you might skirt him a little bit, he might change his pattern, but they're not going to leave the general area. Generally, they're set up shop there, they've invested their time, and I've actually had them bust me in setups and things where I swear to you they're snorting at me out of pure, they're pissed that I'm ruining their date. They're there, they're partying with their ladies, and now who the heck are you trying to come in here? And I'm almost competition in some ways. But you have to imagine the way that your impact in that small area, what it's going to do to them in the short term, and in the long term, it's not going to affect it. But in the short term, during the rut, I get really aggressive where I know where a deer is because 2 days from now, he might be someplace else. So I carpet bomb an area, I want to blow that area out, and then I'll make my move adjacent to it.
Okay, if you blow the deer you're going in to kill,
Sure.
That night, if you blow them in on your way to stand, do you back out or are you going to sit?
Oh, most of the time, by the time you're all the way back in there, you're committed to a certain extent. It just depends and that's where you got to follow your gut and experience. Because I'll tell you, I've been on the way to stands and the farmer's out, doing his stuff. Where you're like, crap, now what do I do? And you got to on the fly. You just got to make those decisions. But if I'm after one animal and I don't care about any other animals, I'll literally get out and just leave. And we've done it with Rusty Nail. Kyle and I got busted by him years ago. This is a picture of a buck I call the Rusty Nail. He's 8 years old right here. And this is in the beginning of October, I think 3 years ago. If you can believe it, this is the first daytime picture I ever had of this deer with hard horns. And I had literally mowed that trail about an hour earlier. And he was coming out that afternoon. It was hunting season. It was like the 3rd of October. I checked the trail camera, and as soon as I saw the picture, I had an idea where he was bedded, and I went right in after him. It was in early October. And I carpet bombed that area, and the last pictures I have of him is literally scent checking on a main trail. I had set up a camera, and he looked up at the camera, he scent checked my scent on the ground, and he was gone. I didn't see him for a month, and I ended up killing him about a mile away. But I had carpet bombed that area, I had blown him out, and then my opinion is, I'd rather take the chances on killing them and then have to come up with a plan B and figure out a way to do it later on in the season. And so in this particular case, it worked, but I had to actually cross a creek with waders, self-filmed the whole thing, went right in, set up in the middle of the afternoon in thick honeysuckle, and killed them at 1:40 in the afternoon or something. And it was literally 14 minutes after I was set up. I was holding my doe, trying to figure out how I was going to shoot through this thick honeysuckle, and boom, here he comes. So. But that was being extremely aggressive. It was late in the rut. I had already tried plan A, plan B, and plan C, and that's when I'll throw caution to the wind. I'll go right in after them. Scent and whitetails. Okay, I'm a huge believer in Ozonics. I've been using them for years. I'm not into like promoting products. I'm not into, we're not in a business, White Knuckle Productions, of making a bunch of money selling products. I was introduced to Ozonics actually by the gentleman in the back, Craig Enervold, who's one of the best white hunters around, and it truly changed the way I hunt. It works. I'm not going to get into a long spiel about it, but the product allows me to do things with the wind that most people, you just can't take the chances of, because if you get blown early in a hunt, a bunch of does get downwind, that one snort's all it takes and your hunt's over. So I've done very, very well with Ozonics because it lets me get super aggressive and go into areas that normally you just wouldn't be able to hunt because the winds are just too unpredictable, or there's too many deer there that get downwind before that buck comes through. And a lot of them position, those big bucks, they like to position themselves in the middle of a bunch of does during the core peak of the rut, because they can not only breed them and be right among them, but they've got all those does' eyes, ears, and noses all around them to alert them of danger. But Ozonics is the real deal. It's not a gimmick. It's fantastic, and if you've ever thought about it, feel free to come back to our booth and talk to me, because they are absolutely unbelievable. They work. Cutting the wind and hunting the wind are topics that you hear thrown around all the time. When people say they have the wind in their favor, I think, well, you're not going to probably see a buck then, because you have to consider the power of these animals' noses. They live and die by their noses, very similarly to how humans see with our eyesight. When we scan a room with our eyesight, we have such great detail, such great color contrast. We can see depth perception. We can pick up so much information with one scan with our eyeballs. Now imagine being blind and relying on your nose, if your nose had that much power, and that's what a whitetail is. He'll trust his nose over his eyes every day. When a whitetail is moving, a big mature buck that has made it to 5, 6, 7 years old, when it is moving from point A to point B, it has to feel comfortable and confident enough to be up moving during daylight. Its nose has to be giving them information along the way, otherwise they will just not feel comfortable moving. You wouldn't either if you were getting shot at from every corner and nook and cranny. When I go in and hunt a stand, I literally have everything set up based on how is a whitetail buck going to want to move through this area to feel comfortable, to believe that it is scent checking and knows the coast is clear before it takes the next step. The hard part is finding those spots where you can still be downwind of the animal, but still give them the illusion or have them believe that they are completely scent checking this whole spot. And usually it's on quartering winds, when the wind's quartering in slightly, and you have like a 10-yard, 20-yard space to be right there where he's coming, believing the wind's in his favor, but yet you're downwind, or with an Ozonics, things like that can help you cheat a little bit. But you just have to look at the way you're hunting. A lot of times over the years I've set up on different spots on a field edge where the wind's blowing right in my face. Hey, it's perfect. I'm never going to get winded. And then you just don't see those bucks. The reason you don't see them is just because the wind is not in their favor, so they're not going to move. So you really got to think about how a whitetail approaches, how they use their nose, and use it to your advantage. So if you can set the stand every single day of the season, whether it's in a ground blind or a stand, and imagine where a buck is most likely bedding, where most likely he's coming to, and do it in a way where the wind appears to be in his favor, where he can scent check that area, that's when you will see these bucks move during daylight. And a lot of the time, it's just a matter of getting downwind of the spots you've grown up hunting or you've been hunting all these years. They've patterned you. You have to realize These animals don't learn everything in their environment from their experience. They start by learning from their mama. So when they're fun and following mom around, they pick up all the same habits of mom. They travel with her. They watch what she does. They see what she eats. They see what she does. They see how she reacts to humans. That's what they learn from. When a young buck breaks away from mama and it becomes a spike horn or a little fork horn or whatever, as a 1-year-old, it starts hanging out with other bucks and older bucks. So then it starts to learn from the dominant animals in your area. So you're literally getting generations and generations of instinct and knowledge of your hunting area in those individual bucks, because they've been learning from the bucks behind them, following the bucks behind them, the dominant bucks, where do they like to go into the field when the wind is blowing like this. They are just creatures of habit, and they've learned through watching the other animals that they surround themselves with. So you're hunting a 6, 7, 8-year-old deer, you're not hunting 8 years of knowledge, you're literally hunting generations of knowledge. And if you've been hunting the same spots for generations, that knowledge and instinct is packed into that animal. And that's just not why you're seeing them at night, because they've got you pegged, their mama had you pegged, and their grandma had you pegged. That's the information they can carry.
One question I have is when it comes to ghost bucks and bedding areas, we drove up from Indiana, so I mean a lot of our core areas contain corn.
Sure.
And I mean so much corn that a lot of that's not down by mid-November.
And they have so many options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your take on corn and bedding?
Bedding in the actual corn itself? I have limited experience, I'll be honest with you, because most of the stuff we're hunting is we've got some beautiful habitat where there's a lot of different hills and ridges, and generally bucks love to bed on an elevated platform. There's something about the instinct. But bedding in your corn, like the one thing, as soon as I hear that, there's a lot of that, put a small kill plot in the back corner of one of those fields and leave it alone. And if you don't have a tractor, mow an area. Deer are social animals. They want to be able to go into an area where they feel comfortable and interact and hang out with other deer. That's where they do their scrapes, their displays, scent check-in, all that stuff. But you just got to stay out of it until the right time. But with a lot of everything going on, you've got to create a hot spot. So I call them social networking areas. Sometimes they're a food plot. Sometimes they're just a series of where trails all come together in a ravine or whatever. And oftentimes they're in areas where the winds are really bad for you, but they can stand in a spot and smell everything around them. So that's where all you see the major buck sign, big scrapes. Deer want to hang out in areas where they feel safe. So those are social areas. You create those social areas. You can create more than one, but that's where the difference is staying out until the right time. You move in there on October 31st. As long as you can get in there and out of there without him detecting your movements, you can kill one. And the cool part about corn is when it's standing, you can walk in and out. You gotta be careful, but that gives you cover. So now you can use that against them as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, calling is one of my favorite topics to discuss, because I learned the hard way over the years, just like all of you. I mean, it's fun to rattle antlers, let's face it, dude. I mean, you're up in a tree, you're freaking bored out of your mind, you're freezing to death. Let's rattle. It's fun. I think it's a guy thing too. Like it is just plain fun, and it makes you feel like you're making things happen. All right. Well, I bought my property 10 years ago, and I bought it actually from a Rich Ball, who's a Whitetail Properties guy. Beautiful house, beautiful view. I thought, oh man, I've got it. I'm gonna kill some giant bucks here. And first year during the early November, I was on one property line, and all of a sudden I hear meh. I'm like, oh buddy, Kyle, my cameraman, here we go, get ready. And then all of a sudden, clickety click, clickety clickety click, and then brr, brr, brr. And we listened to that every 10 minutes for 3 straight hours. The next time I went to a different, I'm getting away from this guy, went to the opposite side of my farm, and I listened to my other neighbor. He had rattling antlers at least. And he was rattling, and then he'd do another can call, and then the grunt, 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 every 10 minutes for 3 hours. The third day, I went to a different spot and listened to the same thing from a different neighbor, and I was like, well, now I know why I haven't been able to rattle any bucks in. You can't control what animals are associate with danger versus something that intrigues them to come in. The problem with calling is, it's not necessarily what you've been doing, it's what your neighbors have been doing and what those animals have been exposed to over the years and educated to. There is simply no way. How many people have ever heard 2 big mature bucks duke it out during daylight in the timber before. Okay? I've heard it once in the timber in 30 years of hunting, and once out in a field edge. It's very rare. It's very rare for a big mature whitetail to be on their feet really moving during daylight, let alone two of them to interact and meet up. So as soon as you clash those antlers together, that's a rarity in a whitetail's world. I will say the buck fight I saw was right outside of one of my sanctuaries. We didn't even see it, we just heard it. And it was, I thought somebody had driven a truck through the woods. The sound of crashing trees and breaking branches, you could barely actually hear the antlers hitting. There was so much noise, but deer came running, and I'm not kidding you, from all directions. Bucks, does, fawns, everything was running to that fight and saying, who's over there fighting? And it was just like an eye-opener, like, boy, if you could create that sound, holy cannoli. But that's why rattling doesn't work often on big mature bucks, is because they don't have all the other sounds that are associated with it. So when you're just up there with antlers, you're sending a red flag right up the tree. You might as well bring a blowhorn and yell at the deer. The other thing is, it's not very common for a buck to stand. I've never seen it in 30 years. I've been hunting last 15 years full time in Iowa, like some of the best areas with big mature deer living around there. I never saw a buck stand in one spot and go, brr, 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 brr. Okay? They're generally moving if they grunt more than once, and most of the time, when I hear a big buck grunt, it's one grunt. So I've changed my whole calling strategy over the years, fine-tuned it, so that I can call mature bucks in it, and I've been able to do it multiple times, but I do it by teasing them and aggravating them. And it's over a period of time that takes hours sometimes if you're close to where they're bedded. But my favorite tactic is I grunt one single time, about every 20 to 30 minutes. And each time I grunt, I do not want it to sound the same. So I use my voice often. I'll take my hand and force the noise out one direction, out of my tree stand or blind. 20, 30 minutes later, I'll use my grunt tube and I'll do it the opposite direction. You gotta imagine if you're up in a tree and you got a buck bedded, a lot of times we're hunting in these thick areas where we hope a buck is bedded right there. Well, if they're sitting in their bed and they're laying there and they don't hear any noise of a deer walking around, all they hear is one grunt. And then they hear another grunt, and it's coming from the same spot, and they don't hear any other associated noise that goes with that, like the sounds of leaves crunching, the sounds animals make. You continue to do that throughout your hunt, you're never going to see that buck. He's probably going to be laying there when you leave, and he'll sit and listen to you leave. And then he'll go out right where you were, and he'll scent check you and realize what you were doing, and you never knew it. You'll never see that buck and never probably kill that buck in that spot ever again, because he's got you duped. And the problem is we've been going back to those same areas over the years and using the same calling methods. Go ahead.
What's your experience on a wheeze? Short wheeze?
Again, I'm talking, I want to fit in and be one of the herd when I'm out there. I want to be a deer. Wheezes are pretty uncommon. You hear them occasionally. I've heard a dozen or more over the years. But again, I think it's one of those calls that's been overdone, and these deer are educated, so it sends up a warning flag. Grunts don't. Every deer grunts, and I tell you, I grunt just as many does in throughout the season as bucks. But you've got to have the discipline to only grunt once. And I'll tell you, if you can get used to grunting with your voice, it doesn't sound like a grunt tube, right? All your neighbors are using grunt tubes. Don't sound like your neighbors. Use your voice. And even if it doesn't sound right, it sounds unlike a hunter. So it sounds more like an animal. And every grunt's different. I've listened to bucks croak and make all kinds of crazy noises. So you can't screw up a voice grunt, whether it's that or a meh. I mean, just something that sounds more natural, but it also just throws them off because it's not the typical grunt, grunt, grunt out of a grunt tube. Quit grunting more than once at a time. And I tell you, you'd be amazed at what you would see. The last thing I'm going to mention is I've been developing a product for the last 3 years, and it's a call that fits into my calling strategy, and it's called Tree Thrasher. I can't tell you any more about what it actually does. We're waiting on some final patent stuff that's going to go through, but it's a tool that I've been developing specifically for calling big mature deer and sounding unlike any other hunter. I want to sound like an animal out in the woods and dupe them. And big bucks have a personality where I don't know if anybody has cats. We have a cat, and I never thought I'd say this, but I love the little cat, man. It's freaking my favorite. But cats have an attitude, and they're just something else. And I'll tell you, cats are kind of similar to mature bucks, I swear to you. A big mature buck, you will not force him to do anything. But if you antagonize a big buck like you antagonize a cat by teasing it, it'll drive it crazy and it'll come to you. And that's how you have to approach calling. You've got to tease them and antagonize them into coming and checking out, all right, I can't take any more. I'm going to get up out of my bed a little early and go see what's going on over there because I don't want to be missing out. But as soon as you get too aggressive with it, you're a human. You've got to figure out a way to break that. You've got to break that connection in your calling. You can't sound like a hunter. Quit watching television and imitating what you see on TV. Those guys are hunting, in a lot of cases, giant, huge sections of farms that have no pressure. And so you can go into a 1,000-acre piece and rattle bucks in. I've done it. I killed one. I killed a really nice 5-year-old. On the same farm, my buddy rattled in a beauty and got a shot at him. But the farms hadn't been hunted in years, and it's like 2,000 acres of unpressured, unmolested property. That's not reality for any of us in this room, most likely. So again, with calling, let your neighbors spook them. Call like a whitetail. Antagonize those big bucks, and little goes a long way. You just got to get out of the mindset that if, well, I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to make something happen. All you're doing is you're making education happen, and you're going to pay the price of that education you're giving those deer for years and years and years. I think in most cases, most guys would be better off not calling at all. But I truly believe the one grunt every 20 to 30 minutes, I hunt on every hunt, whether it's October 1st all the way through the season. With that, sure enough, you make that one grunt within 5 to 10 minutes, that's when you see deer. They just are social. They want to be where that other animal is. As long as you sound right, you sound real. If there's an animal over there, well, it must be safe, right? They want to go to a safe zone. So, but you have to create that illusion. And I'll tell you, overcalling is probably the #1 saver of ghost bucks, because if you think about it, that buck got to 7 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, 3 years old. Think about how many times that animal's been called at and never went in and got killed. So he's already almost uncallable because he made it to that age. If he was callable, he would have died at as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old in most of the areas we hunt. So you just have to step outside of what you've been doing if you're not accomplishing what you're trying to, and look at it from a different perspective.
Well, there you have it. Todd's seminar titled "Killing Ghost Bucks." I hope you picked up a few nuggets of information from the master there. I hope you don't think that he's completely crazy with some of the tactics that he used. Nothing that he said in there is untrue, because I witnessed all of it myself. My jaw dropped a few times while I was on the phone here last season, listening to him tell me exactly what it was that he was going to do. And to be honest, I thought he was crazy, just kind of like I said in the seminar's beginning there. But clearly he wasn't, and clearly he knew what he was doing. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to post them on the post for this podcast on social media, which will be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. If you have a question with specific regards to that seminar, don't be afraid to ask it. With that, I'll close out the show today, and again remind you, www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP. Jason out.